My name is Sam Thompson. I'm the Senior Program Manager for UK Programs here at the US-UK Fulbright Commission. I work on our UK Scholar Program and our UK Postgraduate Program, and I will be one of the main people looking at your applications this year, and we'll be sort of managing the process and working with you through that. I'm also joined tonight by Rebecca Jackson-Wally, who's going to be helping me, particularly in the Q&A section, also with a lot of the running of the webinar. So this wouldn't be possible without her help today. Rebecca, do you want to just say hello and introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure, lovely to see everyone with us, and I'm grateful that everyone's taking the time to join us this evening. As Sam said, I'm Rebecca. I'm the Program Officer, so I support with the UK Scholar Program as well as our UK Postgraduate Program for postgraduate students going to the US as well.
Great, thank you so much. So today is our submitting a competitive application webinar, and let's talk about what we're going to go over here. So today's webinar, we're going to focus on getting started, even though I imagine we're going to be talking to people who are all kind of different stages of the application process so far. We're going to be talking about getting to know the application, getting to know Fulbright, and there's some elements that make up the application too. So this is your academic CV, your research proposal, the letters that go into an application, and then some top tips. These are things that we found from successful applications in the last year, and also things that our alumni have said in the past. And then at the end, we will have time for questions. So let's talk about getting started. First things first, it's not too late. Yes, we have a little under a month left before the deadline, but that's still plenty of time to put into your application, especially if you are strategic and you approach this with a degree of organization and have a very strong sense of how you're going to approach this. That said, it's also a good time if you are planning to apply in the future to make use of this section too. We know some of our scholars in previous years have made great use of attending these sessions with a year or two to then think about their research as well. I would encourage you, if you are thinking about submitting an application this year, and if you're on the fence, to start one. Even if you don't finish it, it's really good practice, but there's a good chance you could finish it. As I say, I think it's not too late to start now. Number two for getting started is go on the Fulbright website, it's fulbright.org.uk, and read our application instructions. If there is one thing you take away from this session today, it is reading the instructions. We try not to hide anything about this process. There are no secrets to how to successfully apply for a Fulbright, as I hope is demonstrated by the fact that we are doing a webinar like this in the first place. But if you are wanting to make the best go of this possible, reading our application instructions is the way to go. They will walk you through step by step of what makes up a complete application to the Fulbright Visiting Scholar Program, and we'll have things at the end like a checklist of all of the things that a reader will be looking for in your application. So there is great value in this resource. I'd also recommend making a list. So yes, there is this list at the end of the instructions, but think about what it is you want to include. Think about it, your plan for approaching this kind of task, this kind of application. Build yourself a checklist. Think about everything you think you need to include, because as I say, I assume people here today are going to be at various different stages of this process. So you're going to have different things left that you need to include. But this will help you stay on task. It will also help you when you're reviewing your application, when you're having someone else maybe read over it before you click submit, to look through it and go, oh, maybe you've missed this thing that was on your list. Or think about, I wanted to include this, but maybe it doesn't seem that important now. Make sure you've got a bit of a list with you so that whenever you're handing this to someone to review, they can check, have you done everything you said you would? And then here, be strategic. This has lots of different applications across this process in terms of thinking about how you're going to approach the application itself, how you're going to select the award that you're applying for, how you're going to use your time wisely. There are different ways of being strategic and different things you can apply your strategy to, but a couple of things right here at the start that we're thinking about going to be researching the awards properly, and we're going to go into that in a second. And they're going to be using your time wisely. So There's lots of parts of this application that require the input of other people, and there are lots of parts that you can do on your own. So if you're at the stage still of looking for a host or asking for people to write your references, you could get in touch with those people now. Say, I'm working on this application. Maybe here's a plan of the research that I want to do. Would you be able to support that? Would you be able to write me a reference? And while that is with the letter writers, with your potential host, you can be doing things like working on your research proposal. And that way you are cutting down on some of the back and forth of this, or letting that happen while you're able to work on something for yourself. I stress that it's important to do this, particularly with the letters of recommendation at this stage, because an application submitted without 3 letters of recommendation is considered an incomplete application and will not be considered for review. So make sure that you are getting those in, because the deadline for your recommenders is the same deadline as that, as the one that you need to submit by as well. So get to know the application. Our application process is made up of a few elements. So we have the written application, and this is split into 2 different things. That's the online application system and the supplemental form. So a complete written application has both of these, a full online application and a completed supplemental form. The links to both are found in the instructions document and on our website on the page for the UK Scholar Awards. A full online application must include the following to be considered complete: a reflective essay, an academic CV, a research proposal, an invitation letter from your host institution, and potentially a letter of support from your home institution, although this is somewhat optional, and 3 letters of recommendation. Some other optional things you may wish to include: if you're planning to teach while in the US, you would need to include syllabus or potential materials that demonstrate your teaching. And if you are involved in a field such as a creative field, you may wish to include examples of your work. For instance, if you're a writer, maybe some extracts or some poems or parts of a script. If you work in the visual arts, maybe some examples of your work there. But we really think those are important too, of getting a sense of the work that it is that you plan to do. Then shortlisted candidates from this process will be invited to an interview. Interviews are conducted over Zoom. They're conducted, myself and Rebecca work on these, and we are joined by a panel made up of Fulbright staff members, commissioners from the US-UK Fulbright Board of Commissioners, and our alumni. Shortlisted candidates, as I say, will be interviewed, but there is no guarantee of an interview. Even if you complete an application and follow all of these steps, we do not guarantee that you'll be interviewed, but following all of these steps and ensuring that your application is complete and that you followed all of our instructions is a great way to at least up your chances of being shortlisted. So thinking about the application, one of the first things you're going to need to do is choose your award. So if you go onto the website of the US-UK Fulbright Commission and head to UK Scholar Awards, you'll be able to see our various partner awards and then the All Disciplines Award. The All Disciplines Award is our largest award category, and there are the most awards for the All Disciplines Award. That said, because it is our widest category and has the fewest limitations on it, you can take an All Disciplines Award to any accredited US university or some other institutions such as museums, and it can be in most fields. This means that it's often a great fit for a number of people, but it's also going to be the most competitive because the most people can apply for this. Our partner awards tend to be a little bit more restricted. Pictured here are our partner awards for Rutgers University in Newark. This is with the Honors Living Learning Center. This is a innovative living and learning community, and the selected scholar will become a part of that community. They will do research there and teach on the modern urban environment, and you do have to teach as part of that degree, part of that program. We also have our award here with Elon University. Elon University is in North Carolina, and they are a university with particular emphasis on experiential learning. And again, this is an award that includes teaching. Other awards that we have open at the moment include our Royal College of Surgeons Award for surgeons and those doing research into surgery, our Royal Society of Edinburgh Award, which is for Scottish researchers or those doing research on Scotland and on 3 specific topics. You'll need to go to the page to check if your research is relevant to those topics. And then the Fulbright Stephen Lawrence Award. So this is an award sponsored by the National Black Police Association, looking at racial justice within things like policing or public health. And again, you'll be able to find more information about that on our website. The reason I bring this up at this point is if any of those partner awards are specific enough to your research, then you may find yourself in a more strategic position because you may be competing with a smaller pool of applicants. Other parts of the application, though, beyond this choosing, is our application is holistic and is to an extent inspired by the US higher education admissions process. This means that we consider all parts of the application and read applications for academic excellence, as well as how applicants fit within the mission of the Fulbright program and the US-UK Fulbright Commission. So we want to know all about you, not just about your research, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then have a plan. You know, going into this, you're going to need to be able to address lots of different things. As I say, you'll need to learn about Fulbright, you'll need to think about how you're communicating your research, and you'll need to make sure that you're getting letters that demonstrate how you are as a researcher, what kind of person you are within a community, what kind of teacher you are, those kinds of things. And so having a plan for how to address all of these with all of the different parts of your application is going to be crucial to success. So as I say, this is one of the ways I think about the application from a holistic perspective. Every part of the application is telling a story. So every little bit that you submit is going to tell the reader something about you. And when I talk about readers, our applications are reviewed by Fulbright staff, so those of us on the awards team, and also by Fulbright alumni. So the alums will be experts within your field, so people who are your peers within the kind of research that you do, which means your application is going to be read for academic excellence and the way that it fits into the field by people who know your field very well, but it's also going to be read by people who know Fulbright and exchange programs and US higher education very well. So you're going to need to address all of those things within your application. So don't repeat yourself too much. We are going to read the whole thing and read it in detail. So rather than repeating yourself over and over again, make sure you're using the fact that you have lots of different sections of this application and take advantage of that. Make sure you're letting all of the different aspects of your work shine through. And weave those exchange elements throughout. We'll talk about that more in a second, about how Fulbright is an exchange, but make sure that is featuring in your work, because if it's not, instead it looks like you're just applying for any grant, and the Fulbright program is a very specific program. Get to know Fulbright. Fulbright is a cultural exchange, not just an academic one. This program has been running since 1948. That is the US-UK Fulbright exchanges. The US-UK Fulbright Commission is the only organization in the world that sends students and scholars to and from the US. We're the only bilateral exchange across the Atlantic in the UK, which means that cultural exchange part is really important to us. It's part of the foundation of the Fulbright program, is the fact that this is a cultural exchange. It's about cultural understanding, cultural curiosity, mutual understanding. And that features really heavily in the work that we do. So it's not just about going and being in a lab for 6 months or being in your archives for all that time. We want people who are going to be involved and want to get to know another culture. So do your research on Fulbright and let your research inform your writing. And there's lots of different ways you can research Fulbright. Our website is just one of those ways, and it's a wealth of different options. There's a section on our story where you can learn about the history of the program, but you can also see what we're working on right now. You can meet our community. You can see what our scholars are doing in the US at this time. We have articles and podcasts. This is a recent article written by one of our scholars who was back just last year from Elon University, and it's such a lovely encapsulation of his time there, and I think a really inspiring thing. Makes me wish I could do an award like this, but it's a great read, and I recommend reading it. We have a Fulbright Conversations podcast where we have different scholars from 2 different areas sitting down and talking about different global challenges and how different perspectives from across the Atlantic affect how they approach them or teach them or research them. So these are great options and great ways to learn about Fulbright. Moreover, you can look at our social media posts or the LinkedIn posts of people who have received Fulbrights talking about how their award impacted them. You may even have alumni on your campus that you can go and talk to, but make sure you're doing your research. As I say, I think understanding Fulbright and how your work can be informed by it and how you can inform the work of Fulbright, I think is really crucial to an application that stands out within our pool. Your academic CV. Many of you here will already have academic CVs, but I think it's important to approach this potentially a little bit differently. So your academic CV for this can be 5 pages maximum, but I understand that people will be applying from different career stages. And in fact, we welcome applications from all career stages. So don't feel the need to hit that 5-page maximum, but know that that boundary exists. They should record your career, but it should also reflect you as a person. We understand the different contexts of the academic system, and we have people apply who are looking for their first postdoctorate straight out of their PhD, right the way through to emeritus professors. So that means we are aware of the different stages of an academic career and we know how to assess those. So we just want you to be honest on your CV and include the things that you think are most important for your career so far and how you as a person would do well in a program like this. We also want you to consider perhaps including a community or civic engagement section. This is something that scholars have done in the past, and it shows how they've already thought about some of the values that make for a successful exchange like this and evidenced how they participate in those kinds of things. Your research proposal. Before you get to the main proposal, the form will ask you for a brief summary. I recommend writing a short paragraph here and make this accessible. Not everyone reading your application is going to be an expert in your field, but some of the people reading it are. You need to be able to understand both audience, or you need to make sure that both audiences understand your work. And having that first introduction to the kind of research you do be as accessible as possible is a winning strategy here. That said, we do care about academic excellence and we do want to see you really flex your academic muscles. So be sure to write about your research in a way that allows people familiar with your field to see how brilliant you are. Think about your audience, as I say, and really with the introduction to your research proposal, grab people's attention. I think that reading Scholar Award applications is one of my favorite parts of my job because I get to see so many interesting things from so many different fields. And there is a way of making someone interested in whatever it is you work on. I know as academics, it can be very easy to get a little bit detached from sort of wider cultural conversations or to feel like your field is a little bit inaccessible. But believe me, there are people who are going to be interested in reading this, and there are ways of making your work accessible. Make sure you answer the questions. So our application guidelines, our application instructions, have a series of questions to consider within your research proposal. Make sure you're answering these, but don't feel like you need to stick to that structure. Make sure you find a structure that works for you rather than forcing your research proposal into something quite rigid if that doesn't work for the way that you want to talk about your proposal and how you're going to spend your time in the US. Use headings and subheadings to guide the reader. And for some sections, you may find that bullet points help you clarify the questions you hope to answer or the objectives you hope to meet. Cultural exchange is really important, as I mentioned too. And so we really want to see you weave that throughout your application. And place matters. You are going to be somewhere, you're going to be embedded within a university, within a community. You should make sure that you're clear as to why that is and why you need to be there, because that's something that we're going to be paying attention to when we read the application. Your application is going to need 4 letters. So that is your letter of invitation from your host, plus 3 recommendation letters. One of the things I always recommend is don't have any of these be repeated people. Your recommendation letters need to come from 3 different people. So if you are going to have someone from your host institution write one of those letters, make sure it's not the person writing your letter of invitation. That way we're getting 4 distinct data points from these 4 letters rather than you losing an edge by having really only 3 authors here. Again, consider your audience. Some of the people reading these applications are going to be Americans, and American letters of recommendation tend to be a lot more enthusiastically written than UK letters of recommendation. They tend to go into a lot of depth, and they tend to talk about the person they're recommending a great deal, and really show how brilliant they are. So when you are asking for your recommenders to write their letters of recommendation, do not ask for them to write something quick talking about how, I don't know, some of the UK letters of recommendation can be very brief and say this person is very competent at their job. That's not going to stand out in this kind of pile. You want people who can really talk about what it is, who you are, and why you're the best person to do something. When it comes to your letter of invitation, make sure your host can actually host you. This sounds like it might be obvious advice, but the number of times that we've gotten to relatively far into a process and then found out that the host actually doesn't host scholars like this, or has specific conditions that need to be met that make this much more difficult is more often than you would think, and it does slow down the process. So make sure at the stage that your host would actually be able to host you within the next academic year. And then some additional tips: draft and redraft, and potentially even redraft again. No one's first draft is perfect, and you do have time to refine this, and you do have time to make sure that it's really hitting all of the points that you need it to hit. So please don't be afraid to redraft. Have a colleague or friend read your application. Give them that list that you've made. Have them read it side by side. Maybe have them read it side by side with our application instructions. Make sure that you are doing everything you can to meet what we are looking for. And sometimes it's helpful to have that external point of view to do that. Be clear about your methods and the context of your research. Clarity and detail are so important for this. I think they're really important for the interview as well. And while we don't have time to talk about the interview in depth, answering those kinds of questions with substance and with clarity is going to be really important. So this is a good opportunity to get some practice doing that, but also being clear about your methods and the context of your research is going to be really helpful for both experts and non-experts alike. Why you and why where you're going? I think if you can answer both of these and spend time answering both of these in your research proposal, in your application, that's going to really help you stand out within the pool. And then write about the USA and write about Fulbright. The number of people who apply for this, and certainly something that was more common in the past, but the number of people who have applied for this, not mentioned the USA at all, and not mentioned Fulbright or why they're applying for Fulbright, would shock you. And when we're reading these applications, sometimes it doesn't matter how interesting we find the application. If someone shows no interest in going to the US or no interest in Fulbright, it may be hard to justify why we think that they're shortlistable. So really think about, all right, why do I need to be in the US to do this research? Why is the Fulbright the correct vehicle for this kind of research? Yes, we want academic excellence. But we also want people who really understand this program and want to be a part of it.